I was an out of control rescuer. I would see their hurt and their sadness, and I would have to go fix their hurt and sadness because I was afraid to feel my own hurt and sadness. That's what's so great with the inside out path is I was doing everything out here. I was shadowing out my power to the narcissist because I didn't love myself and I gaslit myself. I didn't honor my own needs. I didn't value myself enough. So I picked a person who didn't value me either. And so when I own that and realize I don't need to rescue them, I need to rescue myself. I feel like finding this work, I've walked into like a miracle.
Natural recovery from suffering, also called Kiloby Inquiries, is the process by which, through somatic inquiry, we bring into present awareness the root of suffering, repressed emotions and energies in our bodies. As we reconnect mind and body and make the unconscious conscious, we naturally and progressively put an end to the suffering state we've depended on for safety since childhood. Repressed emotions are the energies in our body that have been so deeply buried that we have no idea they are even there. Our survival system has put in place many strategies to keep us from accessing and feeling those emotions because as children it meant the loss of love and safety. Working with thousands of people, Scott discovered that most people are either hurt and sadness repressors or anger repressors, and all of us are repressing fear. Kiloby Inquiries gives us the tools to be able to access and transmute these very hidden and vulnerable places.
I'm nervous.
I'm a little nervous too. That's something I've struggled with, and I've worked a lot with KI is my self-consciousness. Like I grew up extremely shy and self-conscious, mostly my 20s and 30s, but my whole life. But using the KI tools, it really helped with like the fear of being seen and all of that. Because one of the greatest inquiries I found is like, I can be myself fully with them. And then working on the energy underneath that, like, no, I can't. I'm afraid. And working with that energy really helps kind of unfurl all that energy. So
you've been all dimension facilitating for how long now?
I'm newly all dimension facilitator. I've only been doing it for a little over a month. So, but I've been practicing for only a year and a half, but I've been like full on, just like it's been my life. Like I found these tools and I was so blown away that I went in, all in.
Let's talk about your journey prior to coming to KI.
I grew up in a very traumatic, I had a pretty traumatic childhood, although you wouldn't know it from the outside, because one of my commands was pretend everything's okay. Even though, you know, the world's falling apart, I had the command just to pretend. And so I looked okay from the outside, and I'm probably not the only one. I'm sure a lot of us had that growing up.
Have that one. Be nice, be nice, be nice.
And be nice.
Be happy. Yeah, don't show anything else.
Don't show it, hide it. And so for me, like growing up in that kind of having that experience as a child, I was looking for ways to relieve my suffering. And so I tried a lot of things. I mean, I've been doing hatha yoga since my early 20s, and meditation I found really early because I was really suffering. I had, anorexia as a young adult for a while, and yoga really helped me with that. And I tried a lot of therapy. I've done EMDR and emotional focus therapy. I was trying everything I could to kind of relieve that suffering. So yoga was helping. All these nervous system regulation tools that we use are super helpful. And I was just constantly, I mean, I had to be on it. Like I had to do yoga and I had to hike and swim and do all these things to regulate my system like nonstop. But it wasn't until I found KI that I got to, we use these tools and I was able to get to the root of the suffering. So I don't have to like constantly figure out ways to regulate my nervous system. Part of that is like we can't hide the truth from ourselves anymore once we do this work. And for me, I was really just like pretending. I was pretending everything was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, this work can kind of blow up your life in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because we can't hide it from ourselves anymore. The truth of what's happening and what we're hiding from ourselves, what we're bearing with our repressed emotions.
So you said you kind of knew on some level, but did you know about repression?
I knew about repression, and in therapy, like I went to therapy for a long time, and like I knew all my issues. Like I knew what my problems were. I knew how I was creating my own suffering, really.
Oh, huh.
I did, but I didn't have the tools to do anything about it. And that's the thing that's so amazing with KI. It's like, yeah, I had all the awareness of what my problems were, how I was codependent, a rescuer, how I was picking unhealthy partners, but I didn't have the tools to, mine that and do something about it by making it more visible in my life and using these repression tools. So,
but what's the difference between the therapies that you were doing before, because you were doing emotional work, versus like a KI tools?
that's a great question. A lot of people would tell me like, in my life, not a lot of people, but a few people would say like, I seemed like I was like, a pot that was bubbling over and I had a lid on. So I had all these emotions that were repressed and I was just like bubbling, and all I needed really was permission to feel those emotions that were locked in my body in these contractions. That's all I really needed. And no one ever gave me permission because they didn't know how to. So I don't blame these therapists. And what they're offering is very useful. However, in my experience, it didn't get to the root of the suffering, which is what we do here in KI.
Mm-hmm.
So I was walking around with like a lid on this bubbling pot all the time, and just really, it's really painful. It was really painful to live that way.
Yeah. Did you have any physical chronic issues?
I had chronic tension in my jaw, like TMJ, and I couldn't breathe fully into my rib cage. I held my breath constantly. I couldn't breathe into my diaphragm, into my rib cage. And so that's kind of why I tell people like breath work is great, but if our rib cage, like my rib cage was so contracted, I couldn't breathe into my rib cage. So the breath work, it's going to help a little, but if we can't open up our lungs because we're so stressed and traumatized and contracted.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what these tools help with. And then the other thing that my suffering was showing up as was codependency, rescuing, trauma bonding with people who couldn't meet my needs, until I did this repression work. So I would rescue and be codependent with other people because I was afraid to feel my own hurt and sadness.
Okay, so you're a hurt and sadness repressor.
Instead of, I would see their hurt and their sadness, and I would have to go fix their hurt and sadness rather than fix my own. And so that's how it was showing up. So doing this repression work and seeing like, that's what's so great with the inside out path is I was doing everything out here. I was shadowing out my power to the narcissist, that all of that was like a shadow. And so when I own that and realize like, I don't need to rescue them, I need to rescue myself. And how can I rescue someone else if I haven't rescued myself first? Because I'm coming at these people trying to fix, it's all shadow stuff. So they're the ones that need the help. They're the ones that need rescuing. It's not me. I'm together. I'm perfect. I don't have any problems. And there's a lot of pride that comes in that, and like other things. And that's also how I got love, safety, and approval, because like, just to backtrack a little bit, I was a parentified child. Like I had to kind of rescue my mom, and that's how I got love. So I kind of carried that pattern on into romantic relationships where I had to rescue my partner and other people around me, my friends. I mean, I was an out of control rescuer.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because it's such a hot word. And what have you discovered around that in terms of how you were creating that, how you were this rescuer, and so why were you pulling in these relationships?
Because I didn't love myself and I gaslit myself. I didn't honor my own needs. I didn't value myself enough. So I picked a person who didn't value me either.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
You were doing everything you could to try to get that love by fixing them.
Which is an empty bucket. I mean, never, I can never fill that up.
Right.
Because we all have to, at the end of the day, get the love from ourselves. You know, we're never going to get it from someone else at the end of the day, even though we might think that we will. We have to kind of start with ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then it'll show. I mean, my belief is that our limiting beliefs are run by the repressed emotions. And that once we look at our limiting beliefs in our programs and work on the repressed emotion that's feeding it, like for me, it's hurt, sadness, and fear mainly, that those limiting beliefs, they won't have a charge on it anymore. And we're attracting, it's kind of like the law of attraction, you know, that kind of thing. We attract these experiences and relationships in our lives based on our limiting beliefs. But what they don't get with that whole thing is that it's being fed by the repressed emotions. And that once we work on the repressed emotions, we can check the limiting belief in our mind and see how it doesn't have a charge on it anymore. And that's the power of the tools.
Right. We change the inside and then the outside, and the outside includes the person and the personality and the behaviors, and then also how we're perceiving our world and what we're attracting into it. Let's talk about how you saw your outer world shift.
I used to be a compulsive doer. And so I worked on that program. I have to. That was the command. I have to. And that was a mantra I would do when I first started doing 3D KI, which was by mirroring what's going on in the body and just acknowledging it. Because usually what we're taught is like, oh, you know, don't worry about it. Don't feel that. That's not happening. Just, you know, put a positive spin on it and pretend it's not happening. But I would just acknowledge it. Like, I have to, I've got to. And just doing that mind body mirroring in rapid fire really helped shift the energy. Because then I was able to acknowledge what was happening in the body anyway.
Was that in your lungs, the tightness in your lungs? Was that I have to?
Totally. And the compulsive busyness started to fall away. Like, I don't have that compulsion. I don't wake up like, oh, I've got to start the day. I've got to run. I've got to, like, I started doing meditation in the morning, like a 15-minute meditation, like many years ago, because I would just start and just off the gate, I would just rush through my day. And then at the end of the night, just fall into bed exhausted. So I was like, that was the way that I was helping with that, was to start with meditation. But the KI tools is, you know, actually gets to the root. I was just regulating my system that way, but there was still that compulsion to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I broke up with my partner, and that was really hard. It's not easy, you know, like I'm still working on that program. That's the one thing that I'm still working on, which is like, it's okay to be alone.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of hurt. Like, for hurt and sadness repressors, one of the greatest fears is of being abandoned. There's still that fear that I'm working on, but I see it releasing by working on that. Like, it's okay to be abandoned. It's okay to be alone, and working on those programs. And, you know, there's some more opening in the heart and the throat area as I work on that. And there's more freedom in that, because before, I think I would just I was afraid to be alone and I would stay in relationships that weren't healthy for me because I was afraid to be alone and abandoned. So in doing this work, I'm able to work on that program, and I can just feel like the energy shift in my body by working on that. I used to have debilitating insomnia.
Oh, well, that's a physical manifestation.
Right. Like horrible. Like I felt like I was a prisoner of war, like most of my life, because
Wow.
if you go through each day like sleep deprived, it's like a personal hell. KI really helped me with that. Like once we start doing KI, I've noticed that like it becomes obvious in our life, at least for me, like what's not working. And our body, once we check in with our body more, like for me, so like I quit coffee, I quit all caffeine, I quit all sugar. Because
Wow.
if we check in with our body,
Yeah.
my body will scream. I mean, I do have caffeine from time to time, and I do have sugar from time to time, but I notice my body, my heart will start racing, and my body's saying like, no, this isn't good for you. And so I think that kind of fed into the insomnia, is like, and also like I would wake up and have coffee, and then at night I would have like a drink, and I don't drink anymore. By just doing these tools, I realized like I don't need caffeine. I don't need sugar. Like life is beautiful and wonderful and interesting enough without all that. Like
Wow.
there's just so much to be jazzed about in
Yeah.
life without having to like, but it's our trauma, it was my
Yeah.
trauma that was.
But the insomnia had to fall away also. Otherwise, you were tired in the morning. So with the tools, you must have learned how to put yourself to sleep a little better, or that you weren't just.
It was actually a lot of the repressed emotions were feeding the insomnia. Like I had so much. It's like when we're repressing emotions, it's like we're pushing a ball of air under the water all day long. So we're just pushing.
That's
And
a good analogy.
And it just takes so much work to repress.
Keep it down, keep it down, keep it down.
It's so much. And I think, I think just naturally, we just become more balanced emotionally. And so I could fall asleep easier at night because I don't have all this stuff going on in my body, all the contractions and the tension and the unable to breathe and all that stuff.
You said you dove in like full force pretty quickly. So does that mean you noticed results pretty quickly?
Well, I started working with Mihai, like where I live in Grass Valley. He had groups that he was teaching. He focused more on the foundational and what we call the second dimension tools. So more mining and mind-body mirroring and the boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
So I started really slowly with him. And then I noticed it helped a lot, but it wasn't until I started doing the 3D tools with him that I really noticed a shift. So I was doing the groups with him, and I said, well, Mihai, I wanted to have a session with you. And I said, and then right when we started the session, I said, I wanted to do the 3D tools, because I'd been in the members area and I'd seen other people doing the 3D tools. And like right off the bat, like as soon as I felt like he gave me permission to feel those repressed emotions. I mean, it was just like I was talking about with the pot, with the boiling water and the lid on it. Like I felt like someone just took the lid off.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh, like I just felt like such powerful relief just right away. Like someone giving me permission to feel all the hurt, that I had buried.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people have a hard time accessing the emotion.
Right.
For me, it's like feeling the emotion is what is transmuting all of it. So it is really important to get ourselves to a safety place where we can just feel it and let it out. And so I think that's what you're saying, is that in just letting yourself feel the hurt and the pain, you started to feel some relief.
And usually if it's, if we check into the body, we might notice that it's associated with a part of the body. Like for me, it was a lot of contraction in the throat where I was holding back the tears,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the tension right here on my shoulders and in my heart, where if we check into the body, I mean, I think, it can show up as two ways. It can show up just as like full body emotion, and then it can show up as more contraction. So there's
Right.
a lot of ways it shows up. Mhm.
Yeah, and so the inquiry and somatic connection is we're feeling it, but we're also making that label or connection of, here's the sadness, I'm sad, I'm sad, I'm sad. Right?
And that's really important because that's what transmutes the energy, is the mind-body connection. So, because often throughout the day, we're either lost in our head thinking of daydreaming or thinking about, what we needed to get at the grocery store or whatever we're kind of, or what we're going to, we're planning our vacation next month or whatever. And then oftentimes our body we're feeling all these emotions. Maybe they're buried, maybe they're obvious, but oftentimes we're kind of split.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's it's so simple, but that's what's so powerful about this work is, you're right. We just like feel the emotion in the body and acknowledge what it is. Like, I'm sad, I'm sad, I'm sad, or I'm angry. And just doing that is like so powerful, yet so simple.
Mm-hmm.
And
for you, what was keeping that hurt away? Like, so you probably didn't even know there was a bunch of hurt and sadness inside. I guess, what's the connection between, as a child, expressing hurt and why that got so shut down?
I grew up in a very large Irish Catholic family, and so we were fighting all the time.
Okay.
And like we, yelling, kicking, biting, pulling hair, all that was allowed. But if you expressed your hurt or your sadness, generally you became a target. So that's how the hide it, don't show it, don't show that you're feeling weak, you're afraid, you're ashamed. Don't show that, because someone will make a horrible remark to you and tear you down. Like, it could be even like a verbal assault. And just hide it. Like, everything's fine, I'm fine. So that was safe in my family of origin, to express anger. And so I would hide the hurt. And I remember my mom asking me once, like, oh, you seem so depressed, honey. Like, so I think I got the message, like, it's not okay to be depressed. Like, don't show that you're sad or depressed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, I would repress that I was sad, but I'm really identified with the hurt and the sadness and the depression. That's really what I'm identified with, believe it or not, but it's buried. So I am really hurt, and I am, because it's still in my body. The anger in the present moment, it flows. I can let it go, So whatever we repress is what our ego is identified with, because we can't let it flow. We can't. So my identification was with the hurt and the sadness and the depression. It was still in my body. And doing this work, we're kind of I'm being able to bring that online more. Yeah, I'm working on, expressing my hurt and sadness to other people, in front of other people. And that's where the work is.
Mm-hmm. But it's a little bit paradoxical and very unconscious that you would be identified with being hurt. Just as for me, I didn't even realize I was angry.
So it seems counterintuitive, but the more you do this work, I realize that I have to be hurt, and I have to be sad, and I have to be a victim. So that's when we go deeper into the work, we realize that we're attracting whatever's showing up in our lives. And I realized that I was attracting the program that I have to be hurt and I have to be a victim. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to talk a little bit, that's kind of an advanced stage, but when you're acknowledging that, what is that?
Well, for me, I mean, if I could like maybe psychoanalyze it, but it's just what my body's telling me. But if I go back and say like, I felt rejected by my mom, and so I had to be hurt to get her love. Like if she,
Okay.
like I'm a twin, and so my twin sister, you know, she was my mom, one of my mom's favorites, but my mom rejected me because, you know, I was more like my dad's favorite. So for me, if I was hurt and not doing well, she would love me.
Oh,
So often, once we look at the utility of what we do, which is like, what do I get out of doing something? The
yeah.
utility of me being hurt was I get my mom's love.
Mm-hmm.
So unconsciously, if I'm hurt and a victim, I get my mom's love. That's what's buried in my body still.
But if
And
you show it, then you're weak. So it's kind of a double bind.
it is. Yep. Exactly. But unconsciously you could tell like, oh, I'm defeated. I'm a victim.
And did you project out to people who were vulnerable and showing their sadness? Did you project on them that they were weak and like tough it up and these kinds of things that I hear about hurt repressors doing or thinking?
I really noticed it when doing this KI work, because before it wasn't obvious to me, but like if someone can't, you know, get their stuff together, you know, like just get it together. Like, and that was part of my rescuing. Like I was uncomfortable with their hurt, so I wanted to rescue their hurt, but also there was a part of me that was like a little, maybe like, why can't you get it together? Why are you suffering so much? Why don't you just do X, Y, and Z and your life would be better? Like, so that was kind of how it would show up, you know, but at the same time I was a victim, and like people would probably say that to me about my life because like you're with an unhealthy partner, and you know, so it's kind of funny how it shows up like that both ways.
Yeah, but it's like, it's the shadow, which
It's the
I guess
shadow.
really understanding what shadow is. Like,
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Yep. What we see outside is just a mirror of what's going on for us inside. And that's why shadow work is so great, because we can see like, hey, you know, I've got a finger pointing out there at them, but you know, the three fingers pointing back at me, like it's my stuff.
I just like, once you tapped into the hurt and sadness, like, was there a lot that had to be emptied?
Yes. I'm still working on it, but there's still like pieces that I'm finding, but it's just like amazing how much like my body just feels more relaxed. My shoulders aren't like constantly tight, and my back isn't constantly tight, and my jaw, I mean, to have that tension, that clenching of the jaw all day long, and to have that release,
Yeah.
it's like amazing. And then holding my breath, that's painful. It's painful to live like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm such an advocate of this work, and I want to share it with people because I think it's really powerful. And at the same time, you know, it is scary to do this work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to actually, because our whole lives we've been told it's not safe to feel our emotions. So to actually do that, it's actually a relief at the same time. It's a relief, but it's also scary.
Yeah, there's a lot of resistance, but once I go in and release and feel, then it always is like, I'm so glad I did that.
But it is hard, and there is like, for some people, there is a lot of resistance at first.
Yeah.
Like it's really important to go slow and be kind to ourselves when we're first starting this, and not, you know, some people are just like, I just want to get to the end. I just want this to be over. And a lot of it is just allowing what's here. Like if we're stuck, if we're fogging out, a lot of people disassociate when they first start this work, and just going, it's okay to disassociate. It's okay to fog, and just acknowledging what's here is such an important part of this work. So if we're fogging out, if we're getting stuck or frustrated, just acknowledge and stay with that.
Mhm.
And just staying with that will, it'll take you somewhere else eventually.
Mhm. It creates like a muscle or a sense of safety with being able to be in our body. I mean, so many of us are just walking around in trauma response, and it hasn't been safe to be in our body
Totally.
because nobody is. We didn't learn that, and it wasn't safe as children to be fully authentic in our body. And so it is. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes commitment. It takes courage, but the suffering just gets to the point where you're willing to try.
Right.
You're
That's
willing.
what I was like, the suffering is so great. It's like a motivator. I can't live with this anymore. This is too much. Like, not that we want to like do something. We want to do something about it, but be with what is. That's so important. Instead of trying to get rid of it, just be with what is. And most of our life, we're taught to like run away from what is. And so just having permission to be with what is was huge for me.
Yeah, and it's such a journey to come back into the body and to be fully present with our emotional body and what's going on, and just the state of the world right now. There's a lot to be emotional about.
Totally.
So you're available for sessions?
Yeah, if you go to the Kiloby.com website, I'm listed as a facilitator, and you can book sessions with me. And I recommend, joining the members area if you want to check out this work. And I think it's free for the first 2 weeks. And then, there's lots of meetings and recorded meetings that you can watch later. And there's a chat area where people share their experiences, and it's such a great resource.
Mm-hmm.
The members area, for sure. The Kiloby area.
It is. It's a great community of people stepping into their authenticity and courageous warriors meeting.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Do you want to say any last words, like what you're excited about? Or
I feel like finding this work, I've walked into like a miracle, like this work just feels so miraculous, and yet it's so simple. It's just amazing.